TNT.
Now, Radha Stirling is a leading UK-based human rights advocate, crisis manager and policy consultant focusing on the UAE and the wider Middle East. Now, she's founder and CEO of British-based organisation Detained in Dubai, which have helped almost 20,000 victims of injustice over the past 13 plus years. Due Process International and IPEX, Interpol and extradition reform. Now, Radha also hosts the Gulf Injustice podcast. Radha, thanks for joining us. I want to read you this about Omar Khan, and I'll read it because we don't want to create any incrimination. Omar Khan was a weekly contributor to TNT, regard him as a friend, and a key critic of the COVID response, whose work has won kudos from Dr. Ryan Cole, Dr. Chetty, Dr. Jackie Stone, Dr. Harvey Risch, Peter McCullough, Dr. Peter McCullough, Nick Hudson from Panda, Tess Laurie, Dr. Pierre Corey, and Steve Kirsch. A civil matter he was embroiled in got leveraged unjustly in Sri Lanka. It appears to have been politically motivated, devastated his health and his family situation, and destroyed a business that helped so many people. Now, if you want to learn more about Omar's work, that he looks forward to contributing wholeheartedly once he's fully at liberty again sometime next year, please contact me, Mike Ryan, at info@tntradio.live, and we'll pass this on to his family. What can you add to that, Radha?
Omar has actually been in touch with me. He's currently in prison in the United States and holds out hope that he has a 2-year sentence at the moment. He entered a guilty plea. And that's one of the issues with the US justice system that I just see again and again with client after client is guilty pleas because of the weaponization of the DOJ, where simply the FBI levies so many charges against someone or lets them know that they're going to and that they could face a lifetime in prison unless they just accept this little guilty plea. And of course, in those situations, people are likely to simply accept that guilty plea. And it's just too much of a risk for their wives, for their children to gamble with their freedom. And I think that's what we saw also with Julian Assange entering the guilty plea, even though, advocates for him say he should have maintained his innocence. But Omar is struggling at the moment. He's been transferred to a prison in Kentucky where very dire and dismal circumstances, and we certainly don't want to get him in further trouble by talking about them. But in my experience, and I've dealt with torture cases in the Middle East and all sorts of horrendous prison conditions, but the United States often takes the cake when we're talking about those kind of conditions, and it's really surprising to a lot of people. So it's really disappointing to see that he's been transferred against the orders of the judges to a state where his wife cannot visit him. And we're hoping that with the assistance of members of Congress and even Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, that they might facilitate at least a transfer back to where he can see his wife again on a regular basis. And hopefully, he has been there a while now. Hopefully, they can facilitate his speedy release, and then he'll be able to talk, as you say, at liberty about what actually happened there. He cannot do that at the moment from behind bars and jeopardize himself, his freedom and safety, but I'm sure we'll hear more from Omar.
He is such a gentle soul, highly intelligent, magnificent wordsmith, does swear at times too, which is my sort of bloke. But I mean, if you look at people like Omar, you look at people like David McBride, Julian Assange, and there's probably countless others. First of all, the comparison to that and some South American corrupt government and jail, the similarities are scary. But Andrew Eborn, who's on the Muckrakers here, a barrister of extraordinary talent, says he has trouble with people pleading guilty to either the whole lot or one or two charges. And he understands that they have pleaded guilty to make their life better or get out or have a sort of a normal life. But if you look at David McBride, he pleaded guilty. They tricked him, I believe, and he is now serving 3.5 to 5 years, or probably 5 years in jail, and this guy should be a lauded servant. He should almost receive a medal because he put his life on the line for truth. How do we get around? Because the human psyche, we all no one wants to go to jail, and so if you accept guilty and thinking you're going to get out, does that sort of compromise you as a person? And how many times have you seen that this backfires? They get you to plead guilty, and then they throw the entire book at you.
Do you know, I was having that exact conversation on the Muck Records late last week, actually, in reference to Julian Assange's guilty plea. I think it's a really difficult and personal situation. Now, I understand the argument that if people start agreeing to these sentences and standing up there and saying they're a criminal when they're clearly not, that paves the path and encourages authorities to target people and compose frivolous charges against them and throw the book at them, even when they know there's no evidence and that it wouldn't stand up in court if it went to trial. So it encourages them to act completely irresponsibly, unethically, and in many cases unlawfully. So I think the more people do enter guilty pleas, the more encouraging it is to authorities, and we need to break that cycle. So I absolutely understand that, I do encourage people to stand up for it. We had Christopher Emms was the FBI was after him and wanted to charge him with wire fraud. They made up this crime that he had not committed and put so much pressure on him. He actually considered it for a moment, and then he realized, this is going to ruin my life, damage my reputation. I've done nothing wrong. I'm not going to enter that plea, and he didn't. And that's been life-changing for him, but it was yes, absolutely, but it was the right decision for him to make. Who knows if he had agreed that in advance, whether they would have levied more charges against him once they had him within their reach. And he was fortunate enough to be outside of the country and to have the extradition request denied, whereas Omar Khan wasn't that lucky. He was in Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka does not have the kind of justice system that you want to have when the US is trying to extradite you. Basically, they will say yes to whatever they want.
Interestingly, Christopher Emms actually worked here for a while, doing a show from deepest, darkest Moscow, and a very, very good guy. And married now with a child. But people say, oh, he should be doing this and he should be doing that. Christopher Emms had permission from the British government. The Americans overruled that after the deed was done. He's now living in Russia. He can't get out, really. His whole life was turned upside down because of the US and its insistence in extraditing him back to the US, where his business partner also did the same. I'm not too sure if he's out, but he was locked up. So how do you stop these governments, which seems to be led by the US, how do you stop them from distorting the justice system?
It's very difficult, and Chris Emms, I'm actually working to have his name removed from Interpol, and I expect that to be done any day now, really. The US and its universal jurisdiction is essentially the problem here. And, you had Australia trying to do that with Elon Musk and X and, export their jurisdiction elsewhere. But the US is extremely skilled at this. They did it with Julian Assange. They did it with Christopher Emms, who's not a US citizen. And it wasn't to extradite him back to the United States. He hadn't been to the United States. So how can the US think that they can simply, see someone on the other side of the world and say, you know what, you are subject to American law? Since when has a British national or an Australian citizen been subject to US law? This is an unacceptable overreach of jurisdiction, but it's set as sort of a precedent. If you look at the UK, they were also talking about extraditing Elon Musk for, posts on social media that might have incited riots. So it's gone absolutely crazy, and definitely we need to fight that as much as we possibly can.
There's a couple of laws in Queensland that have come to light in the last few days, and they don't have an upper house, so they can the Labor Party can sweep through whatever reform they want to do, and no one can really stop them. So the first one is on social media. And if you are to post something on social media that basically upsets someone, which could be anyone, that is then regarded as a criminal offence. And if it's a criminal offence, they can then be jailed, according to the Queensland government, for up to 3 years. Tell me this, Radha, if someone because I say it's in the public domain, it's out there for the public to see. If someone in, say, Melbourne or Sydney, Perth, middle of Australia, posts something and it contravenes the law, the new law in Queensland, is it feasible that they could also be then extradited to Queensland or to Brisbane because they committed a law that's an offence in that particular state?
Well, technically, if someone makes a complaint within Queensland, then that charge could be implemented there and they could be prosecuted in the Queensland courts. Now, we'll have to see how that plays out. But if we look at Britain as an example, people are getting jailed for their Facebook posts, for their social posts, and it's an unacceptable escalation. Queensland, I mean, there's been so many really good bills that have been declined within Queensland. And now we have this new the anti-discrimination laws just expanding and expanding, which is obviously going to be a huge red tape on companies. It's going to stifle innovation. It's going to make it really difficult and expensive for entrepreneurs and companies to operate. It's going to make it frightening for the employees that work there, that they might inadvertently offend someone. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about personal offence. If someone's personally offended, this suddenly turns into a massive government investigation of not only the company, but also potentially a criminal investigation into the individuals at that company. This is not the kind of environment that we want. And of course, there were bills to say, people who did not take the COVID vaccine should not be discriminated against, and they were completely declined by the current administration. I feel like Labor knows they're on the way out and they are trying to ram through as much authoritarian legislation as they possibly can, including digital ID, social media restrictions on under 18s, which is just to open the door into restricting literally everyone's access to social media.
It's a very, very scary world we live in, Master Jack. It's an old song. Radha, if somebody wants to find out more about you, how do they do that?
Yes, I'm on X. It's just my name at Radha Stirling, or just Google me. They'll find me.
Just think maybe version 2, Radha, we can have you with your own show. I think you speak from a sense. You're my knight Hess, in shining armour. Radha Stirling, thank you very much.